Really great to be here, and it's such a privilege to be here with such a distinguished group. I'm happy to be facilitating this conversation. Our panelists represent a range of insights across different layers of a system and in different contexts. So since we've had the chance to hear from Olli, I'd love to ask our other panelists to please give us a little bit of an overview of how you see this question of innovation, changing systems, and especially how it relates to the work that you do. And let's start with Leslee.
Thank you. I must first just say I'm so thrilled to be here in this community. My organization, or the one I founded called Think Equal, was one of the HundrED collection in 2020. And it was the pandemic, and we had none of this convivial, amazing community. And I'm living it vicariously all over again. So thank you for this opportunity. And just one other tiny disclaimer. On the school visits yesterday, you'll have seen the children in the Finnish schools work barefoot. So I thought, when in Finland, do as the Finns do. Great. And my shoes were hurting anyway. Okay. Innovation. The innovation of Think Equal, which has scaled to an extraordinary degree and continues to scale every week. We're now in 30 countries. 4 of them have mandated this program for every single child in the entire country. They've brought the program into the national curriculum. This innovation was born out of a sense of emergency and purpose. The purpose originally, in brief, was to disrupt discrimination and end violence. It came out of a series of interviews I did in Delhi's Tihar jail with rapists and murderers. And the insights I gleaned from that mind-blowingly dark journey, which was the most luminous journey I've ever been on or ever will be on, were simply this. Yes, education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world, as Mandela said. But the key question is, what kind of education? And as Olli-Pekka mentioned, it is certainly not the model we currently have and peddle to our children. That is the Industrial Revolution model designed to fill factories. And the education we have is simply a conveyor belt taking children from the classroom to the labor market. In the world we live in today, with the violations of human rights that daily, relentlessly, ubiquitously plague us, how on earth can we be satisfied with that? So there is a missing dimension to our education. We at Think Equal call that dimension social and emotional learning for well-being, psychosocial support, and social justice. And we have designed a program with the founding patron of our organization. I have to call out his name here because he had an incredibly close relationship with Finland. Sir Ken Robinson, who sadly died a year and a half ago, but Ken spent the last 3.5 years of his life generously giving of his time and his energy and his attention to helping us create this very simple, very narrow, small focus program. We only work with children 3 to 6. We are just plowing that one narrow furrow, which is about foundational brain building, laying pro-social neuropathways in a co-creation of learning with our youngest, our most vulnerable citizens. It's very simple, this program. It has 3 components. It has books, 1 book every week. Yes, it shoots literacy up, but that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to shoot up moral compass and the 25 competencies and skills we teach our children, environmental stewardship and gender equality and racial equality, self-esteem, all 25 competencies and skills which are needed. That's inclusion. This, which we wrote with the World Health Organization, deals with anxiety and bringing those levels down. I'm not going to go on. The other component is lesson plans. Teachers are overwhelmed, especially in the early years. They are undervalued, under-respected, underpaid, and we cannot expect them to know how to mediate a new subject that has never been taught before, that they have never learned. So they need the tools in their hands. They need our support. They need everything they can get. How did we scale?
In 1 minute, please.
We scaled because the need is so great. We scaled because the purpose has integrity and was recognized. We scaled because, and this is the most fundamental reason we were able to scale, because we designed the program to scale from the beginning, because we knew if we don't scale, we fail. At the end of the day, you have 10 drivers on a highway, and if one of them has not learned how to drive with consideration and respect, you still have that accident. So it was designed from the start. We knew we were in an emergency and in a rush. Yes, of course, reflection is important, but we've done that as we have built the plane and are flying it. I'm going to stop now because I think I'm running over time, but I hope that gives something of an overview.
Thanks so much, Leslee. It's great to hear the passion that you bring to this, and hopefully we'll have more time to come back to you. Dr. Asmaa.
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity, and it's really hard to speak after Leslee and the great keynote from Olli-Pekka. So I really want to focus today on the process of implementation and the practical side of implementing innovation based on my research experience and teaching experience in the last 25 years. So I started my career as a teacher, then moved and worked as a school leader, then focused on the policy level, working with policy makers for the policy makers. As I said, I'm really interested in advancing and investing in the how, the process of innovation, the process of implementation, and I think this is the core message of the messy middle report that HundrED just published. So my research in the last 25 years focusing on capacity building for school leaders and teachers. I agree with you, Olli-Pekka, about the bottom-up approach and the top-down approach and how we can have alignment between both. I'm also interested in educational leadership, especially the agile leadership, and I talk more about this in details. The focus of my PhD work and my first book looking at the role of school leaders as implementers of the educational reform in Qatar, in my country, and the challenges of the implementation, especially during the complexity and uncertainty. Now I work as the Director of Research. I've been leading the research agenda at WISE, the World Innovation Summit for Education. It's an initiative of Qatar Foundation, and innovation is the DNA of what we do. We will have our summit end of this month, so this is an invitation for you all to join us and contribute with our global community. 3 months ago, I joined one of the universities in Qatar Foundation, Hamad bin Khalifa University, as an assistant professor to teach master and PhD students public policy in education. And at the core of what I teach, preparing future leaders, equip them with the skills, mindset, and tools, working at different levels to implement and have impactful, sustainable implementation. So as you can see from the last 25 years, if I can summarize at the core of what I do, my teaching, my research interest is bridging the gap between research, practice, and policy. This is how I see effective implementation. One important point I want to highlight here based on what Olli-Pekka mentioned about the learning through the process of innovation. Innovation either, as Leslee said, implementing social emotional learning, well-being program, or any program that we hope to bring to a system. I think we should differentiate between implementation as delivery versus implementation as learning. This is how we link between theory and practice. What I mean, we want to introduce to our systems a non-linear process, an agile process where we encourage teachers, and I'm glad to have teachers here, part of our discussion today, to provide the conditions for them to test new ideas, incubate these solutions. The whole idea of the messy middle report is the incubation phase. What did we learn? What can we learn from this messy process during the incubations? And support teachers through continuous learning, continuous feedback that steer the improvement process. So that's the type of learning we want to focus on. Yes, we all need to understand what to innovate, how to innovate, and the why, but also the human factor, the human aspect of it, which is the who. Who here are the people who will implement, the purpose, and the process. So this is, I think, an effective implementation. Two additional points here, the role of leadership. We know from the literature, from my own research, I have been looking at different types, different definitions of leadership, either agile, collaborative leadership, instructional, distributed, multi-distributed leadership. At the core, what we need to focus on, taking the action that Leslee is talking about here. So this is an important, we shouldn't neglect when we talk about new ideas and new innovation. We need infrastructure for innovation, and one of them is effective leadership. The culture of innovation, I think one important point came in the report. Can we scale up culture of innovation? Mm-hmm. And culture of innovation, I think this is a very powerful point. And culture of innovation, we need to provide time, resources, space for teachers to learn and innovate, but also the social emotional learning and the well-being. Regarding the leadership, which is the core of what I do, in 2017, I founded a global network, All-In, Agile Leaders of Learning Innovation Network, with different partners around the globe. And now we are in the final stage of publishing a report about educational leadership in transformative education. To summarize my main point, number one, in implementation, we need to bridge the gap between research, policy, and practice. Number two, it's non-linear process. We need to focus on why, what, invest in the how, don't ignore the who. And finally, I advocate for evidence-based policies with the support of excellent leadership. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Asmaa. And Marjo, could you share with us how you see innovation contributing to systems change?
Thank you very much. And first, thank you, Olli-Pekka. It was a pleasure to listen all your thoughts. And probably I had so many, when I was preparing my kind of contribution to the discussion, so I had so many similar things that you said. And I don't think it's only that we are both Finns and kind of products of this society. Also, Leslee, just like to kind of agree, I can't agree more that social emotional skills, they play a crucial role when bringing up our future and future citizens. And actually, what our Deputy Mayor Johanna Laisaari mentioned, that we are in the edge of publishing our Education 2030, Helsinki Learns Future Competencies, a strategy paper, and there we have come to an understanding that there's no well-learning without well-being, and you just can't kind of foster the academic skills and key competencies. You have to focus on social emotional skills. They are kind of parts that can't be separated, and actually if we neglect the social emotional skills, so we are not as we can't sustain in a nutshell. And also, I think you covered a lot what I had in my mind. I have my PhD in future school leadership, and actually have been thinking of leadership and how do we change, how do we promote sustainable change in a systemic way. I've been working in the leadership position for the city of Helsinki almost 20 years now. Coming February, it will be 20 years ago. I was appointed as educational manager for basic education, and I'm currently working from the early childhood up to the adult training. And but I'm a teacher by background, so I always kind of think, when thinking of innovations, I'm coming to your question now. So when thinking of innovation and their implementation, so the change happen in our schools and daycare centers. And we can have high speeches and ideas, but if we can't, as you pointed out, if we can't kind of scale them and implement them for everyday practices, so then they are nice thoughts, but they doesn't have any added value, or they doesn't give any added value to our students and children and young ones. So when thinking at the city level, so we kind of have to think, as I think our Deputy Mayor already mentioned, that our objective is that all our schools and daycare centers, they are good. So thinking of implementing education innovation, that is certainly needed, because what was good for yesterday is not bringing us to the future. So we need to, as you pointed out, Olli-Pekka, that we need to change our system in a constant way, but in the sustainable way, that we are not kind of burdening our teachers and principals. And specifically nowadays, where so many things are happening in our environment, that's crucial to think of how to make the innovations scaled in a way that our teachers and principals, they are empowered. They feel that they have the agency. They do know what's best for them. So we have to give kind of frames or the direction, as you mentioned, for the city of Helsinki and all our schools and daycare centers and upper secondary institutions. So we have a joint objectives, kind of the vision that where we are going. But then there has to be sufficient space and time for choices at the school and level. So, and the one wisdom that we have known for a long, I think, not only in Helsinki but in Finland, that the best results happens when our teachers and principals can make the choices, because they know best what's happened in their environment. Our schools and daycare centers, they are located, as our Deputy Mayor mentioned, in different locations, and we have different challenges and different type of families that we are working with. So the average is never anyone's best. But when thinking of innovation, so it has to happen at every level of the organization, as maybe Olli-Pekka, you said. So that's something that our teachers and principals, they have to have kind of they take, or they have to feel that it's something that they understand, that it's good for the children, good for the young ones, and they want to promote that. Then we need leadership, definitely. We need leadership that is not just telling people to do things, but how do you empower, how you call people for collaboration. And that has to be applied at every level of our organization. Not if our principals are not trusted, if they are not empowered, how can they can promote empowerment of their teachers, and how the teachers can then empower and promote agency and go-agency of our students if they are not empowered. So kind of thinking of that, what we are doing together, and that's something that we want to do. We understand why it's important, but we give space and time for our teachers and principals to implement the innovations. And then we give them support and structures that they can succeed. And then definitely we need those forerunners that are kind of ready to make big leaps and try something new, even if they don't know where to land. And that's something that, how do we work as a city of Helsinki when we are implementing innovations and when we are kind of driving the change in our education through innovations. And just to finalize, actually, the City of Helsinki, the strategy of City of Helsinki is that we want to be a platform for innovations, and that also applies for education. We are proud of that we can promote innovation, and we have several structures and practical examples of that, but I think time is now out, so I will give there's time for the next questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really comprehensive. And just shows really the wealth of knowledge we have on this panel. So I want to turn to the next question, which is a little bit about the Messy Middle report that HundrED put out last month. And we were really lucky to have Dr. Asmaa write the foreword for. And we define the messy middle as this period of complexity and uncertainty that occurs after an innovation has been tested and piloted, but before it's really been institutionalized as part of standard practice. So it's really on the way to systems change. And we say that it's really important to navigate the messy middle by having mechanisms to build stakeholder alignment, as well as opportunities for reflection. So I wanted to turn to Olli next to see if he could talk a little bit about this opportunities for reflection, especially as you talk about the importance of learning and mechanisms to build stakeholder alignment.
Yeah, thank you. I think as you said that the messy middle, it's a kind of a moment of uncertainty and complexity, and kind of thinking about where the word complex comes from. It comes from two words, com, plekto. Com is together, and plekto is to wave. So actually it means to wave together. It doesn't mean, as we often understand it, that it's something complicated. Complicated is a different word. But complex actually means to connect the dots. And I think that's the thing that is exactly needed in that kind of a moment, to be able to kind of go through that uncertainty to another level of understanding. And that is a learning process. And then we come to the question that how that learning really happens. And I think we've heard kind of excellent descriptions of that how it happens. I kind of like the concept that was created maybe 5 years in Finland in the Prime Minister's office at that time, called the humble leadership. The leadership which starts with the idea of the leaders being able to admit that they don't know the right answers, but they have to learn with others that what might work best from the different perspective of the challenge that everybody is dealing with. And of course, there are different moments for leadership. There are other types of moments, and then different type of leadership is needed. But to kind of making the way through that messy middle, I think that kind of a humble leadership is valuable exactly because of what Marjo was referring to, the kind of empowering that needs to happen. And then it's actually the role of the leader really to kind of make the half-cooked decisions that actually are almost ready to be kind of plucked away, that the people in the system have come up. And that's actually a very easy task, because you almost kind of course, you have to learn to see the patterns that start to emerge. But it's really then the people and the system who gives the right answers, what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Marjo, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how you have built stakeholder alignment in Helsinki Education Division.
Yes, thank you. Happy to share with you. As mentioned, so we have been in the process of building up objectives, strategic objective, how to develop education in Helsinki till 2030 and beyond. And this process started 2 years ago, and our genuine kind of will and what we want to do is that people are involved, that people are heard. I would say people are heard. And that's something, sometimes we say that, okay, we involve people, we arrange them seminars, and then we tell them what we are thinking, and then something that you mentioned, Olli-Pekka, that then people, those who are already believing this our agenda, so they believe, but those that are not believing, so they are saying, no, what is that lady telling, and nonsense, and I'm going to do business as usual. So we started with a lot. We have had during this almost 2 years' time, we have had different occasions when we have sat down and listened what our leaders, principals and other leaders have to say, what they have in their mind. And the simple open question has been that what are the future skills needed, what are the skills needed and competencies needed in the future? And how do we build operational culture in our daycare centers and schools that promotes, that allows these skills to grow, and nothing else. And then we have been just listening and writing down what are the thoughts that people have. And we have done with our leaders, we have done several iterations. We have invited our teachers to discuss with us. We have discussed with our children and young ones and students and ask them, what do you think that, what is the best future for you? More than 3,000 students were, children and young ones were involved. And then we have called our parents to discuss with us. And with this process, I hope we have 15,000 actually professionals working for the city of Helsinki Education Division. So obviously not all of them have been actively involved. But with this process, we hope that now that we are almost ready to launch, what are the outcome of these discussions? Plus we have reflected it to educational research and some documents, global documents like OECD, Learning Compass for 2030. So we hope that when we are starting to discuss with our teachers, and we have involved also the teachers union and our and so that this is something that people can feel that, okay, that's what we have been talking. Let's now implement it. Let's now put it in practice. But it's really important that you have patience to listen, because we teachers, we are really capable of talking like 45 minutes without any pause. So listen and respect and create an atmosphere of trust so that people are not afraid to give some of their opinions that might be kind of contradictory what you are thinking of. And the best feedback what we got from these discussion was one teacher said that, the teacher said, not only one, that really? This was marvelous. You were listening to us. You didn't make us to make some workshops and writing down. You just listened what we had in our hearts.
Thanks so much, Marjo. I really love that story, the power of listening. And as Olli said, the power lies with trust. So I'd love to dive in a bit further to this question around trust. And I'd specifically love to hear from Dr. Asmaa and Leslee. How has building trust and gaining trust really been important in the work that you've done? So let's start with Dr. Asmaa.
Yeah, thank you. Just to link this question with the earlier point about connecting the dots. And the difference between complexity and complicated. Because we are looking to have an environment, a healthy environment that allow everyone to learn. So building trust, I think it's part of the infrastructure for innovation. We need to build the trust. So I want to share lessons learned from personal experience during COVID-19. At that time, I led 2 projects, one with 3 schools and one project with a system. And I want to share what did I learn from this as a researcher, but just to highlight why do we need to build the trust, why it is important. I think number 1, to support the co-designing between teachers and leaders and systems. Number 2, working with different levels will curate, will support alignment. Because when you work either with one school or a system, you will, if you are leading this project, not only from operational side, even from building a shared vision, you will need alignment. And this is so important to build the trust and to reach the goal you are looking for. By the way, one of the project was really successful. It took a long time. The second one, I don't want to say unsuccessful, but it didn't reach all the objectives we were looking for. Number 2, why do we need the trust? Number 3, strengthening the goal of implementation. And this really came clearly in the messy middle report. What did I learn? I think that helped me to lead teams and projects in a more impactful, effective way. Number 1, we need to make it easy to start with. Any innovation, you need to start with an easy process for everyone to understand. You need to make it simple. And if you look at the literature in business, you will have great ideas about the importance of starting small to have bigger change. Number 3, building the capacity. 4, enable progress. And finally, curate social learning. I really like, Marjo, the point you shared about when teachers see the impact or the evidence, they will say, that will work in my context as well. So we need to consider the social aspect of learning. I want to end with the approach I use with local schools in Qatar. When I design and implement capacity building, the agile method, and I published several reports around this, we need to start small, fail well, and learn fast. The message here, we need to embrace failure. The humble leadership is so important. The healthy failure, we need to encourage people, teams, organizations as well, to learn from failure. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very challenging question, particularly for me, because you can see that our mission at Think Equal is one which demands agility, alacrity, swiftness, because we consider the house to be burning and we need to deal with it now. Trust building takes a hell of a long time. As does training teachers. We could sit for decades trying to teach teachers how to mediate social emotional learning. Brand new subject. How on earth do they know how to get up and teach it? But we haven't got decades. H.G. Wells said, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And I haven't heard anything truer than that. We are hurtling towards catastrophe every week, every day. And so we need trust, of course we do, and we need to build it fast. And I think what has helped us at scale, because we are not working directly with the parents, we're not meeting the parents. We work only through partnerships, so partners in every country we work in, and we work closely with the partners who know the context and are working closely with the teachers and the education ministries, because of course, as everyone has said, top down, bottom up, all together to achieve the purpose. So I think what builds trust is integrity of purpose and unity of purpose. We can all smell integrity at a mile off, right? And we are absolutely inured to not trusting. We don't trust facts anymore. We don't trust politicians. Why would we? We don't trust men who have led us into wars again and again. We beg for women to lead, but none of this is happening. So if we have unity and integrity of purpose, trust comes. I was last week in South Africa, where we are building fast through 3 provinces so far. In the Eastern Cape, 4,100 grade R classrooms. And I was filming one of those classrooms, and then in the Western Cape, one of the nurseries, ECD centers in Khayelitsha, which is a township in the Western Cape. Mothers came and gave their testimony. One mother said, since this program, my daughter has saved my family. I was in a depression. She comes home and teaches me how to breathe and how to move from the red of anger to the green of calm, from the blue of despair to the yellow of joy. And children as agents of social change. It's actually happening. If you have a program that has been put together by some of the world's top brains, people who care, people who have integrity and have purpose, that program's going to build trust. The children come home and the parents trust to the fact that you're there for the good and the well-being of their children and indeed their families. Another mother said, and then I'll end, because I know we're short of time, said that her little girl has never been confident. She has 2 older brothers and they do the talking for her. She came home after 3 weeks of this program and the mother said, I was bowled over. Suddenly, she has found her voice that I've never heard before in 4 years. And I was angry that day. I was in a bad mood. She said to me, Mummy, you must be patient with me. You must talk to me with kindness. Now that could have turned the mother into, what the hell are they teaching my child? What are they doing, trying to make my child turn against me? But no, because love prevails, even in the worst of families. Everyone wants happiness and well-being for their children. And when the system and all the stakeholders work together with purpose, when you persuade that education minister that it will be his legacy for his country, it costs the same to give this program here to 48,000 children as it costs in England to incarcerate 1 violent offender for 1 year. What are we talking about, really? Trust.
Thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate, the passion that you bring, and also for calling attention to this tension between the urgency and the need to act fast, and also that things like trust and building stakeholder alignment do take time. And I'm just wondering if anyone else on the panel had any responses to that or any strategies for how we kind of address those tensions. Olli, perhaps?
Well, I think there's one way to deal with it, and that's to make sure in the system that there are a lot of small learning loops. That the learning happens in a kind of as close where the teaching and learning happens in schools. Because the typical model is in many kind of nations that the learning loop is very, very long. It goes all the way up to the top and then it comes down, and that takes a lot of time. And that's, of course, the challenge with kind of national curriculums and making kind of big strategic changes, and what was discussed yesterday and today about the challenge of really the problem is the implementation. And so to kind of make sure, and again we come back to the agency of teachers and the heads of schools, and also in the middle layer of schools coming together to learn from one another, to have that kind of peer-to-peer learning, which comes more and more important. So I would say that's the thing that can kind of speed up and make sure that the urgency is there, because at the end we also should need to be able to create that connection between the world and school. That there isn't a separate school and then there's a world, but the things that happen in the school should be reflecting the world. And once people stop seeing each other as kind of roles, but start seeing each other as humans, then valuable things start happening.
I love that. Thank you. So I'd love to turn it now to you all. You probably have a few questions. We have a few minutes. So if you could raise your hand if you have a question, introduce yourself and briefly state your question. We'll try to take 2 or 3 at a time so we can get through a few. Who has any questions? I see Denise has one in the back.
Thank you. Sorry if I seem greedy. But this is a question that actually is coming from the live stream chat, and I thought that I would facilitate this individual. And the question is, I'm curious to know what the panelists think about applying these frameworks to third world education systems, which are obviously contextually very different from first world countries.
Thanks. And can we take one more and then we'll get into that?
And maybe building on that question, specifically for Marjo, but others are welcome to answer as well. So empowering teachers, there's the kind of the methodology for doing that, but then there's also the capacity to do so. So the balance between, or is the risk of giving a lot of autonomy and freedom if the system and the teachers and the principals don't have the skills and ability to deliver with that autonomy. How do you see that balance, and what's the right sequence of things?
Great, let's stop there. And Leslie, why don't you take the first question?
The whole question of contextualizing and dividing us by this nomenclature that says this is a developed country, this is an undeveloped country, it's absolute crap. There is no such thing as a developed country, not one of them. If England, where I come from, so I'll have the cheek to talk about my own, as it were, if the Education Ministry of England doesn't even recognize the need for social and emotional learning, can that possibly be a developed country? I don't think so. Do you know who's paying for this program? 40,000 children in Greater Manchester. The Health Ministry. And the police, not the Education Ministry. The Education Ministry think their only problem is that 20% of children aren't back in school post-pandemic. And the parents are teaching them and they don't know what they're teaching them. They think that's their problem, okay? So there is no developed country. And there are only universal values. We do not contextualize this program for every country we go to, because if we did, we would be underlining the stereotypes instead of smashing them. Values of self-esteem, empathy, emotion regulation, emotional literacy, problem solving, environmental stewardship, all the things we teach are universal values. Why would we change them country to country? The last thing I'll say is, in one country, we were asked to remove a dot, a red dot from a character in one of our books called Angeli's Kite, because we were told that means the character's Indian. And we are Pakistani and we hate the Indians. And I said, if you need us to remove the dot, we will remove the program from you, because the whole point is that you're to learn to love the Indians and they are to learn to love you, right? So bottom line is, we must stop thinking of the world in this divisive way. We are one human family. You are the other me and I am the other you, wherever we come from in the world. And we need to start embedding these universal values so that we can have a prosperous, a free and equal world.
Great listening to you, Leslee, and I can't agree more. And actually, I'm also reflecting to this kind of research-based understanding. Helsinki has now, actually, we just finished, was the second round with the OECD study of the social emotional skills, and the participants were all over the world. And we have the joint understanding. Of course, the curriculum varies, but how to kind of the core things that what we are learning here are the very same, irrespective of the environment. Jani, you asked a very, very difficult question, but I've been thinking of that as I had an opportunity to travel a bit around the world, and definitely in Finland we are in a very good position in terms of empowering our teachers. They have high quality professionalism. They are all universal degrees, and there's also something that it's in our culture, the culture of trust. So we know by surveys that all our parents, we get very high marks in terms of when we ask that how satisfied you are with our services. So it's a cultural thing that people do trust education in Finland, and we trust our principles and so on and so on. And it's not only for education. I think it's something that is a culture in our Finnish national culture. But coming to this empowerment of teachers, so I think one thing that can be changed and kind of not directly copy-paste, but in Finland and in Helsinki, we don't believe in ranking and inspecting. And that's something that we don't believe that if you go to the scale every morning and you expect that today I have lost some kilos, though it doesn't happen like that you are inspecting and scaling. You have to support the process, isn't it? So how to do it in the countries where the teachers' kind of knowledge and competence is not that high is to build structures for supporting the teachers that they can have the ownership, they can be empowered in the way that kind of meets their competence. And believe it or not, I know that when you start to trust and when you empower your people, so they grow and they can fit the room. But if you are inspecting and ranking, and so then you are kind of shrinking the whole personality and you are just afraid of doing mistakes. And we know that nothing new comes out of the environment or culture where there's fear. So we have to have this kind of culture of trust, but you have to adjust to the circumstances. I don't know if I answered.
Thanks. And I know we're running out of time, but Dr. Asmaa, did you want to come in quickly?
Just to comment on this important question. Number one, I think looking at best practices either in developing or developed countries, Global South, the West, going to the earlier point where we should invest and pay more attention to the how of the implementation. So yes, we look at different best practices, but we also need to consider the context that will allow teachers to have better implementation. Number two, from WISE experience, the organization have been working with, we have WISE Awards. And if you look at WISE Awards and the innovation that we recognize, it's not related to financial resources. It's more about the innovative ideas and the practices that allow innovators and implementers to work together to have a successful implementation and to scale up. One last point about decision making, and you mentioned in the definition of the implementation in the report the theory of Rogers' theory on diffusion, and I really like that definition because it will allow people to implement and to have successful implementation, because this is not fake implementation or fake decision making, but you really involve them, and this is how we empower teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are pretty much at time, and as Olli said, there are no final answers, right? So we're not going to get closure here, but maybe we could get a final takeaway. So if I could get a one-sentence takeaway from everyone in our final 30 seconds, that would be great. Can I start with you, Leslee? One sentence.
Action, action, action. We have so many reports, we have so many conferences. Just let's get on with it because we're running out of time.
My takeaway: support support teachers' learning, have lead their learning in more positive way. Again, referring to the report of HundrED, there is a section about is there end for the messy process, and this is the idea of ongoing learning. So we need to support teachers' learning. That's my final word.
We can only success when we do it together. So let's invest in that, and also the agency and co-agency of all the stakeholders, but specifically our children and young ones.
Well, maybe I would kind of refer to the last question or the question that Dennis asked. I think that the central question is that education systems, they function in a context. And so understanding the context is the key. Those people living, for example, there was a reference to the Global South, they are the best experts what it is to live in that context. What are the different ways of knowing, being, connecting with each other, becoming? And that's what we should respect. And not to try to push from top down that you need to do something, but support that kind of knowledge and being human to flourish.
Thank you.